With the collapse of the oil embargo to force Iran into a confrontation over the Straits of Hormuz, the US and Israel are looking for another way to get the long-sought war with Iran started, and more to the point, need to make it look like Iran is starting hostilities in order to make it politically and more difficult for Russia and China to support Iran. Now, recall that Israel has a past history of attacking US warships and framing others to trick the US into attacks on Israel's enemies, with the Israeli attack on the USS Liberty, initially blamed on Egypt, as the most well-known example. So here we have the USS Enterprise, the oldest carrier in the fleet, on her last legs, scheduled to be decommissioned next year. Her name is well known in part because of the Star Trek TV series. Decommissioning a nuclear aircraft carrier is a very expensive process. USS Enterprise is powered by 8 nuclear reactors, all of which must be disposed of as nuclear waste material along with all the associated machinery. The US Navy would save a great deal of money, more than the scrap worth of the steel, if USS Enterprise were to be sunk in the Persian Gulf, where the radioactive mess is someone else's problem to deal with. So why send an ancient warship at the end of a useful life into harm's way? The same reason Franklin Roosevelt moved a bunch of obsolete warships from San Diego to Pearl Harbor, while their newer carriers and warships were well away from Hawaii on December the 7th, 1941. Israel has 3 Dolphin submarines, given to her by Germany. They have been seen transiting the Suez Canal in the past and could well be operating in the Gulf of Oman, even the Persian Gulf by now, lying in wait for a used-up and obsolete warship, more useful as a sacrificial lamb than an actual weapon, a ship with American sailors to be attacked as Israel attacked the USS Liberty, then to be blamed on the designated target, Iran, by a compliant media. If you agree with this analysis, please post this video everywhere you see this carrier story. If we can make them doubt a false flag will be believed, maybe they'll call it off.
But speaking of Iran, there are massive U.S. troop buildups being reported by a lot of different publications. I've got family that's been sent to Kuwait. There's major naval buildups in and around the Strait of Hormuz. Israel admits they may strike them. The United States and NATO have put giant sanctions on Iran. Iran is threatening to close the Strait of Hormuz. This is moving rapidly towards open war. There's already covert war going on inside of Iran right now. The base is getting blown up, the generals being killed, the scientists being assassinated. All of this is unfolding and really starting to come to a head, and we'll continue to break all of that down as it unfolds. I talked to political scientist, PhD, and insider, former State Department highest security clearance individual, Dr. Jerome Corsi, today, and he said the intel is the physical hot war is imminent. The Free Home of the Brave, it's all about torture. And I'm glad we've got this article tonight, because there's a lot of news I end up not covering on the radio. This was one of our top stories. I didn't get to it. A U.S. Intel director prepares public for false flag event. And this is a big report put out by the Brookings Institute, which is like a big CFR think tank. And they've got some of the top directors of intelligence in here, all quoted by name. You can go read it, saying, quote, "It would be far more preferable if the United States could cite an Iranian provocation as justification for the airstrikes before launching them. Clearly, the more outrageous, the more deadly, the more unprovoked the Iranian action, the better for the United States would be." And then they go in to talk about attacking them more internally to get them to do something. Actually, go read this. This is put out by them. Like Gary Hart 5 years ago sent Ahmadinejad a letter saying, "We'll stage terror attacks on you," and published it in the Huffington Post. He says, "We stage Gulf of Tonkin, we stage other stuff." Yeah, 9/11. We staged the incident with the Maine. We'll do it again, punk. And they just gave Al-Qaeda Libya. They're trying to give them Syria. And then lecturing me that some pedophile is going to stick his hands down my pants at the airport because Al-Qaeda. What? What? Look, I see the fraud. I'm awake. It doesn't work. Unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. It goes on here to say in the hope that Tehran would retaliate overtly or even semi-overtly, which could then be portrayed as unprovoked act of aggression. And they go on to say, that's in a Brookings Institute, Fortune 500 funded think tank, which path to Persia? Like, how do we get to war? Page 84, 85. Considering that the Gulf of Tonkin incident was deliberate fabrication, escalate the Vietnam War, one of many members in Congress are shown to have acknowledged and debated, even at the time, we have links to that, or even more recent Iraq WMD hoax, there is certainly historical precedent to create such provocations when targeted nations refuse to provide them. And they admit they're blowing up bases, assassinating, bombing, killing. They got al-Qaeda attacking them, and then say Iran's with al-Qaeda. That's really rich. With this in mind, and noting a overt, ongoing series of bloody acts of war carried out by the U.S. and Israel inside Iran, along with sanctions and planned blockades, also acts of war, the corporate financier oligarchs have been confounded by what seems to be infinite Iranian patience to endure such provocations, because they want to shut down our freedom here during the war and stage terror attacks and blame it on Iran. You understand? This is why they got NDAA and, you know, the pedophile TSA on the streets and all of it. They're getting you ready to protect you from Iran. It goes on here. This is a great article written by Tony Cartolucci for Infowars.com, but I actually highlighted it differently when I covered it on the radio. I'm looking where it actually quotes the Clapper, the head and national security guy in here. I'll just keep reading until I find it. With this, or Control F Clapper, and then just put it on screen. With this in mind, and noting an overt ongoing series, he goes on to say about the infinite Iranian patience to endure such provocations. U.S. foreign policy makers have noted for years now that Iran is actually poses no threat to the U.S. or Israel national security, and their acquiring of nuclear weapons serves more of a deterrence against future military incursions against the Islamic Republic by the West than a means of launching unprovoked attacks against nations that all possess nuclear deterrence of apocalyptic scale, like Israel, with 400 nukes at least. While Iran endures an increased torrent of unprovoked attacks, they steadily advance their defensive capabilities to ward off what seems like an inevitable invasion by the West. There it is. Despite this documented evidence, the Director of National Intelligence, James R. Clapper, Jr., made a startling statement recently, citing an already discredited alleged Iranian plot involving an assassination attempt of a Saudi ambassador on U.S. soil, that Iran is now more willing to conduct an attack on the United States in response to a real or perceived U.S. actions that threaten the regime. So they're blowing stuff up inside the country and admitting it, saying they want to stir them up for a response, but then going on the news like the public are a bunch of jellyfish idiots and saying, Iran says they may attack America. And they did have one of their parliament members who's on the Intelligence Committee actually say that. There's a lot of evidence some of the Iranian government is globalist operatives. After all, the West actually put the mullahs in power. And some of the mullahs may want an attack because they're very unpopular, and an attack has been shown to make them popular because their public will rally around them. So all these thugs, all these tyrants basically want this because it props up corrupt governments everywhere. But Iran generally, strategically, wouldn't want to attack the United States so that they would then be attacked massively and probably invaded themselves. They would attack through proxies like Hezbollah and other groups against Israel and against U.S. targets over there. But that is a big article. U.S. Intel Director prepares public for false flag event, and that is certainly one of the most important news stories we've got for you this evening. Please get it out to everyone you know at Infowars.com.